Thank you so much, Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy. You drove Star Wars into the ground, and now you did the same with Indiana Jones. Hi everybody, Anthony from Awesome Anthony Productions, and today we're going to review one of the most controversial movies of the year, Harrison Ford's last outing as Indiana Jones and John Williams' last scored film, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. As you can tell, I really enjoyed this movie. But before we get started, you know exactly what to do. Please help out the channel and leave a like, please subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss any of my new reviews. Now let's get into it. Now, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny actually starts on a pretty promising note as we meet up with a de-aged Harrison Ford playing Indy in the late days of World War II in 1944. Here's where we also meet the main villain of the movie, Nazi astrophysicist Voller, played by Mads Mikkelsen, along with an apparently super important character that we've never met before, Toby Jones as Professor Basil Shaw. This whole opening sequence lasts about 20 minutes and is a perfect return to form that really feels like Indiana Jones 3.5 in the best of ways. And the de-aging technology, while definitely not perfect, is actually pretty solid, despite the fact that he's definitely talking with Harrison Ford's old man grumble.
What do you kids think you're doing?
Oh my god.
Are you okay?
I feel great. Just young and full of energy.
And it's pretty obvious that they shot it at night to hide some imperfections, because there's certain scenes where, depending on the lighting, Indy's face looks very rubbery, his eyes look dead, and his mouth doesn't really sync up with the voice all that well.
Do I look better now?
Yeah, man.
But thankfully that's only in glimpses, and for the most part it works. This scene also sets up the main MacGuffin that all the Indy movies have had. This time it's Archimedes' dial, the Dial of Destiny, an item said to be able to change the past. And then the movie rips any sense of fun right away as we jump forward to 1969 and meet up with an Indy who now is a broken, lonely old man. The crazy thing is that when we first catch up, it's almost like the movie wants you to laugh at how old and grumpy he is. Oh, look at your childhood hero, he's turned into an old curmudgeon, isn't that fun?
You kids get off my lawn!
No, it's not fun, it's sad. Exactly what I wanted to see as a lifelong fan of Indiana Jones. Say what you will about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but at least Indy is taking charge, energetic, adventurous, and good-humored in that movie.
You're a teacher?
Part-time.
Anyway, he's in the midst of being forced to retire from his position at Hunter College because he's old, in case you forgot, when he runs into his goddaughter Helena, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Oh boy, have I got some stuff to say about that character, but I will get to that later. Helena convinces Indy to join her for one last adventure to locate the other half of the Archimedes dial, but Voller is determined to do the same thing, showing up once again, having hidden his Nazi roots and is now working for NASA, which is actually based in reality. Apparently there was a lot of ex-Nazis that came to work for NASA. From there, it'll be a race against the clock and around the world to stop Voller and reach the dial before he does. Why don't I get the good stuff out of the way first? As much as people and critics complain about nostalgia bait, a lot of the nostalgic parts in the movie work for me and are honestly the only parts in the movie that work for me outside of that beginning. The callbacks, the cameos, the familiar musical motifs, they made me smile.
It's how hard you believe it.
And sure, there's no depth to them outside of, oh, this will probably make the audience smile. But compared to the rest of this depressing mess, is that really that much of a bad thing? And even though I'd rather not see my Indiana Jones as old, depressed, and broken, Harrison Ford, as always, does his best to hold on to that charm and wit, even if the script and movie are doing everything they can to undermine that from him. But right as I found myself thinking, okay, this isn't too bad so far, I'm not the biggest fan of where Indy's ended up, but this could be a fun adventure, the absolute worst part of the movie shows up. The worst character in any Indiana Jones film. She's the daughter of that oh-so-important character we've never met before from the beginning, Basil Shaw, and Indy's apparent goddaughter, Helena Shaw, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, aka Fleabag. And even with the rest of the stuff that I liked or tolerated in this movie, she robs it of almost any sense of fun, adventure, or excitement, and she replaces it with annoyance and anger.
You stole it. Then you stole it.
And then I stole it. It's called capitalism.
Once Fleabag's introduced, she becomes the main character, and Indy's just along for the damn ride. She's totally full of herself, she has no morals whatsoever, her motivations are all over the place and change on a dime, and she always has to outsmart and outmaneuver everybody with a smug, know-it-all attitude and a smirk across her face. She's frankly just the worst, and represents the worst tendency of Hollywood nowadays when they make strong, empowered characters. They don't make them flawed, relatable, or real, they just make them perfect, smug, and cocky. She has no character arc or struggle, she barely grows at all throughout this 2.5-hour movie. She lectures Indiana Jones, the guy who spent decades going on life-threatening adventures and saying, "It belongs in a museum."
That belongs in a museum!
She lectures him for being a grave robber. Meanwhile, she steals the dial for him and leaves him for dead so that she can sell it on the black market. Yeah, who's the grave robber now, Helena? She lectures the audience about capitalism. Meanwhile, this is a movie made for money, clearly just for money, by one of the most capitalistic companies in the world. Oh, and of course, just to add the cherry on top, she constantly abuses Indy and makes fun of him for being old, while going on about how beautiful, strong, and capable she is.
I am so great. I am so great.
Yeah, in one scene, she praises herself for being adorable, daring, beautiful, and self-sufficient. Oh, and I didn't paraphrase, that is straight up dialogue from the actual movie. I hate this character. She can't even keep a straight face when her and Indy are having a serious conversation about the dial. Constantly smirking that smug, shit-eating grin and saying things like, yeah, I know. Constantly putting down Indiana Jones and trying to beat him to the punch with everything. Doing all of the stuff that he should be doing in his own movie, along with the fact that she takes away pretty much all of his agency and has to save him multiple times. He basically does nothing during the last act of the movie while she does everything.
What are you doing here?
Rescuing you!
But Kathleen Kennedy's gonna do what Kathleen Kennedy does with making her self-insert perfect characters that are already great on their own and can do it with absolutely no help from the toxic white male. Even when this toxic white male is the main character of this franchise that has been beloved for decades, that people just want to see do his own thing in his own movie. So as far as my complaints go, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is the biggest one.
This is a good time to let you know that I hate you.
Anyway, that's enough ranting about Fleabag and how she drags this movie down, so I'll get into my other complaints here. I feel like I'm one of the only ones who actually really enjoys Kingdom of the Crystal Skull for what it is, but one complaint that I'll always agree with is that a lot of the action scenes are way overblown with too much CGI and green screen. And guess what? I have the exact same complaint about this film. One of the best parts of the original movies were the action sequences. They were done practically for the most part outside of some special effects, and they had a really strong sense of realism, pitch-perfect physical comedy, and characterization. From the opening temple sequence in Raiders, to the minecart chase in Temple of Doom, to the battle on top of that tank in Last Crusade, everything is clear to see, choreographed to perfection, and feels real, because it was. Hell, I can even say that about the beginning Area 51 chase in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull or the motorcycle chase through the college. Here, though, every single action set piece is way too long. Half of them feel completely unnecessary and like they were just thrown in to pad out the runtime. They feel way too fast-paced compared to what we've gotten before. They're completely unrealistic with how much octogenarian Ford is just jumping around and moving and surviving all of this. And they're filled with so much CGI and noticeable green screen to the point where almost every single action sequence in this film failed to draw me in, and I couldn't take any of them seriously.
Green screen!
The writing is also pretty trash. The jokes don't land, the dialogue between characters is about 90% clunky exposition, the emotional beats either don't land or are just completely non-existent, and the story is riddled with plot holes the size of the Ark of the Covenant. And even though Mads Mikkelsen is a great actor and has made a career out of being a quiet, intimidating villain, he has about as much depth as any of the nameless henchmen that we've seen throughout the indie films, and his cronies get even less depth, especially Boyd Holbrook's Claber. The rest of the side characters are pretty pointless too and have no real characterization, and they really just serve the plot, along with the rip-off Short Round, Teddy, who literally from the second he popped on screen and I heard his backstory, I just thought, okay, this dude is Short Round without any of the personality, and he's clearly just there to do whatever the plot calls for.
You're an imposter!
Even if it doesn't make any sense. Other pointless characters that seemed like they would be a big deal in the marketing are CIA operative Mason, played by Shawnette Wilson, and Antonio Banderas. They're barely in the movie and they have no development whatsoever. Even John Rhys Davies' Sala gets the same treatment, even if the nostalgic parts that they brought with that character made me smile.
Give 'em hell, Indiana Jones!
I also thought that the editing and the pacing were kind of all over the place too, with that extended 20-minute prologue forcing the first act to be chopped up very short, with the second act being incredibly long and filled with those overblown action sequences, until we're suddenly in the rushed third act with hardly any warning.
How did I get here?
All of this makes for a very messy movie, though John Williams' epic score does a ton of heavy lifting and helps make it more bearable, along with nostalgia that made me smile even if it was pretty lazy. Occasional glimpses of classic indie humor.
Get back!
And that truly great opening sequence. But that all leads to a climax and ending that is somehow anticlimactic, has no agency for Indy, and was completely rushed at the same time, hardly giving a satisfying end to the story. Instead, just throwing in some insanity for left field, then capping it off with a little nostalgia to make people smile and convince them that they didn't just watch one of their favorite adventure characters get deconstructed and humiliated for the last 2.5 hours. I've seen a lot of people saying this is a triumphant send-off for this character. Nope, it was a whimper. Also, just to address something that I've seen online a lot, It's pretty obvious to me that they reshot the ending here. I don't know if they really ever intended to kill off Indy and have Fleabag take over his place and do all of his adventures like the rumor was, but it's clear to me that at some point during the last act, they decided to cut things and completely change it, because the ending is rushed as shit. Peter Pan and Wendy takes my title for worst movie of the year so far, but Indiana Jones 5 is not going to be too far behind it. And it is definitely the most disappointing movie I've seen all year, especially considering James Mangold was the one that directed it. What should have been a Logan-style swan song for this character is a mess of bad writing, one-dimensional characters, an awful co-lead to Indy that spends the entire movie talking down to him and talking about how amazing she is, overblown and CGI-heavy action scenes that failed to get me invested almost every time, heavy-handed messaging, and an anticlimactic third act that makes no sense and rushes towards a half-assed, nostalgia bait ending. Yep, it's another bait and switch with disastrous results. Ke Kwan just won an Oscar. You could have dropped Helena Shaw from this movie and had it be one final indie adventure with him teaming up with Short Round, and it would have been so much better. So, well done, Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm. You've killed Star Wars, you killed Willow, and now you killed Indiana Jones. And that's my review of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Sorry it was so negative, this movie really just kind of stabbed me in the back. But if you like this review, please leave a like, it really helps with me building out my channel and getting a bigger audience. Subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new review. You can also find the links to my socials in the description below, leave a comment with your thoughts, let me know if you liked or hated the movie or if you're somewhere in between, and while you're at it you can click or tap on these cards here. They'll take you to my review of Elemental or just over to my channel where you can check out my reviews, my shorts, and my old shit. Thanks for watching everybody, and I will see you next week for my review of Insidious: The Red Door.